All right, human geographers. So today we're continuing our one child policy DBQ document analysis, and we are going to be taking a look at document F. Document F. So make sure that you guys go to Schoology, open up your document F, and have that alongside so that you guys can read along. All right. So document F, you'll notice we have a note at the bottom of document F. So that's going to be helpful for us later on in this reading. For this reading, there's a few ideas that we're going to stop and discuss throughout. So let me get the annotation tool out and ready to use. And here we go. So the one child policy relies on a mix of sticks and carrots, which are punishments and rewards. Depending on where they live, couples can be fined thousands of dollars for having an extra child without a permit, and reports of forced abortions or sterilization are common. The law also offers long maternity leave and offers benefits to couples that delay childbearing. Those who volunteer to have only one child are awarded a certificate of honor for single child parents. Since 1979, the law has prevented some 250 million births, saving China from a population explosion the nation would have difficulty accommodating. So looking at this first paragraph, a few things that we want to take a look at. First thing, sticks and carrots. That's an old saying for punishments and rewards. So if that confuses you at all, don't even worry about that. Look at this. A stick is a punishment. A carrot is a reward. So you can read that as the one child policy relies on a mix of punishments and rewards. Okay. Depending on where they live, they talked about people can be fined, meaning like you get a ticket, thousands of dollars if you have another child. So if you have another child, technically you can get away with it, but they fine you thousands of dollars. So for a lot of people, you might not be able to afford a multi-$1,000 ticket just to have another child. So that's one way, that's one punishment that they use to make sure that people follow one child policy. Another thing that they added here, reports of forced abortions or sterilization. So that would be like if a woman goes in for an annual checkup and they find out that they might have a baby and it would be their second one, the doctor, without asking, might do one of those things, a forced abortion or sterilize, meaning a surgery to make sure that they cannot get pregnant again. And they can also do that on the male end too. I know it's sad, but unfortunately that's what that's what we're covering here right now. Okay, so that was definitely something that happened, and it was one punishment for not following one child policy. On the other half of this paragraph, they talk about all of the rewards that were possible to gain if you follow the one child policy. So longer maternity leave. Maternity leave is time off from work, but you still get paid. So if a teacher is having a child, if they're having a baby during the school year, and your teacher is gone for a few months, that's considered maternity leave. They're still getting paid to be gone for a while so that they can take care of their baby as a newborn. So in China, to encourage people to follow the rule of one child policy, they say, if you follow it, we'll give you a really long maternity leave that's enjoyable so you can be with your new baby, right? Another thing is a certificate of honor, which maybe some people want a certificate of honor from the government. So those are the big rewards for following the one child policy. So let's move on to this second paragraph. But critics of the policy note its negative social consequences, particularly sex discrimination. with boys being viewed as culturally preferable. The practice of female infanticide, which had been common before 1949, but was largely eradicated by the 1950s, was resumed in some areas shortly after the one-child policy went into effect. The resulting gender imbalance widened after 1986, when ultrasound tests and abortions became easier to come by. China banned prenatal sex screening in 1994. Nonetheless, an April 2009 study published in the British Medical Journal found China still has 32 million more boys than girls under the age of 20. So there's a lot that happens in this paragraph that's really important that we understand. So, starting off in that first sentence, critics are people that go against whatever you're talking about. So in this article, we're talking about one-child policy. Critics, people who are against one-child policy, talk about negative social consequences with sex discrimination. So sex discrimination, we're talking about males or females being treated better than the other. So for example, if you get paid more just because you're male and you guys do the exact same work as a female who gets paid less, that would be an example of sex discrimination. There's no reason for a female to be making less money in comparison to a male in the same job, right? So that's an example of sex discrimination, and they give a few examples of how sex discrimination was kind of encouraged by the one-child policy. The first thing that they brought up, again, we have a lot of sad stuff that we're talking about in this article, but infanticide is when a infant, so a newborn baby, is killed on purpose for, in this case, being female. If you only have one chance to have a child, we discussed this a tiny bit in document, I think, E, but with only one child in China, there has not always been equality between males and females. So when parents were only given one shot, they sometimes really, really wanted a male, to the point that they would do this to try and get another shot at having a child. And so they saw that practice started to increase. Later on in the paragraph, so I'm sorry, I didn't underline the word. That's what we were just talking about. And then later on in the paragraph in 1986, when ultrasound tests and abortions became easier to come by, they also saw gender imbalance. So people picking to either try again or prefer to have male children continued. And in 1986, it was popular because in ultrasound, it's kind of like taking a picture within a mother's stomach while she's pregnant. So at a certain point, you can actually see, is this going to be a male or a female child? And again, because of sex discrimination, sometimes a mother might decide to abort that baby in order to have another shot at having a male if it was a female. So again, just another awful example of sex discrimination happening. But again, the critics of one-child policy are saying this is really because one-child policy was put out there. How can you tell a family that they only have the opportunity to have one child in a society where maybe males and females are not always treated equally? So it's a very, very hard, complex, and sad problem that they had to deal with. So because of that, the next sentence, and just because the sentences are next to each other and I don't want to be confused here, I'm going to change colors for just a moment. Because of these practices, China did not allow their doctors to tell you if you were going to have a male or a female in 1994. That's what prenatal sex screening is. telling you, hey, you're going to have a baby boy or a baby girl. So China put out a law that said the doctors are not allowed to tell you if it will be a boy or a girl to try and stop those awful things that we were just talking about. Excuse me. So even after this, in 2009, a study found that there were a lot more boys than girls that were under the age of 20. A lot more boys than girls under the age of 20. So think about what that means for everyday life. Boys might have to compete a lot more for a love life, or for a wife, and for a chance at having their own family, because there's so many more boys than there are girls that are young. So when they grow up, they might have a really hard time being able to find a woman to make a family with, because there's so many more boys than girls in their age group. So let's take a look at this last paragraph to look into that a little bit more. The total number of young people is a problem as well. Factories have reported youth labor shortages in recent years, a problem that will only get worse. In 2007, there were 6 adults of working age for every retiree. But by 2040, that ratio is expected to drop to 2 to 1. Analysts fear that with too few children to care for them, China's elderly people will suffer neglect. When we look at this paragraph, we're talking about not only is there a sex discrimination problem with one-child policy, but there's just not a lot of young people being born. Everyone is only allowed to have one kid. It means there's not a lot of children. And because of that, when they get older, so looking at the year like 2040, they mentioned, once the newborn children are getting older and their parents are retired, there will not be enough of those people in that age group to take care of all the people who are retired before them. Because again, they're only having one child. So if you have 2 parents, takes 2 people to make a baby, you have 2 parents and each of them only have one child, that means one child has 2 people to take care of when they all retire. And so that creates a big problem. Who will take care of the aging population? And because of that last sentence, they fear that China's elderly people will eventually suffer neglect, like not being taken care of. As usual, I do want to make sure that we take a look at this note at the bottom. Always read these extras, like the notes and the bar graphs and the graphs and tables that are always added into these documents. We have seen that in every single document that we looked at that had a note, it was really important. All of our documents with tables and graphs have been important. So let's take a look at this one too. So this one tells us ultrasound is a technology that enables doctors and parents to see a picture of the fetus when it is in the mother's womb. The fetus's gender can be detected through ultrasound. Infanticide is the purposeful killing of infants. So again, we get 2 definitions that this time we already discussed, right? We discussed what these 2 words mean as we were reading them, but it's there for us in that note for you guys to look back on as you're doing your questions, all right? So again, when we look at document F, we want to be thinking, was one-child policy a good decision? Does document F support one-child policy, or does document F go against it? So does document F support or go against the one-child policy? That's something for you guys to think about as you guys go to do your document F questions on Schoology. So thank you guys. Keep up the great work. Remember, you're going to Schoology and doing your document F questions. Document F questions. Everyone have an excellent day. Good luck on those, and see you next time.